Welcome back to the NFLandU podcast, everybody. It's Friday, November 13th. I just realized it's Friday the 13th. Wow, how about that? And welcome to the NFLandU podcast. I'm your host, as always, Hayden Vassar. I am joined by my great friend, Mark Hogan, and we are here to preview the rest of Week 10. Yeah, Week 10, we are already there. Mark, how you doing, my man?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm glad we're pre-recording this thing, though, with the Masters on this week. It's kind of funny. Yeah. I don't know if anyone noticed. It's gone under the radar. The Falcons have their bye this week, and I kind of wondered did the schedule makers do that on purpose, kind of be like, oh, look, everyone in Georgia, they're going to be watching the Masters. We give the Falcons the week off. I'm glad they gave me the week off anyway. Finally got that win under my belt, picking the Falcons, and they come through for me.
Mark is like the happiest man in the world who isn't a Falcons fan right now, just because he finally got it right after all these weeks.
Falcons they almost messed it up too, though. Like Denver, like we're coming back. I was like, I don't believe it.
Oh man, but it worked out though. It all worked out in the end. Thankfully.
Yeah, no, it was, and it was fun to be able to take a couple of game lead early in the week in this week's slates. Fair way to go to Cardinals kilted last week, who again beat us. We're now 0-2 against the guests.
That is not good. We got to be better, Mark. And I took an onus this week. I'm like, I am not gonna let another guest picker beat me in the standings. I ain't gonna let it happen. But I'm tired of letting these guys come in and show us up. But speaking of guest pickers, Mark, we have another one this week because Mr. CJ from TheRaiderRumble.com and at The Raider Rumble on Twitter will be joining us this week as our guest picker. So big round of applause for CJ. You can go check out his work on YouTube and Twitter at The Raider Rumble. Very thankful that he came on and joined us. And as we probably will give a bunch of praise to the Raiders this week.
Yeah, I suppose why don't we start there and launch right into them, Hayden? Because
beautiful segue.
I said it on my power rankings this week, and I want to get it off the top here. There's an elephant in the room about these books, whether they're good or not, and I just want to get it out. I'm not panicking. I mean, yeah, the loss had consequences. They've lost the tiebreaker with the Saints now within the division, but like, let's not forget where we were going into this game. All three of us last week picked the Bucs to win that game against the Saints. PFF was saying Brady's the best quarterback in the league, and it was supposed to be them relinquishing the Saints of the NFC South division, essentially. Like, I got messaged about this off someone the next day. A Chancellor off friend messaged me saying, like, am I thinking that they're frauds? And absolutely no way. Like, their defense is still there. And the offense is still there. It's the most talented in the league. Like, yeah, it didn't look right, but we said this when the Saints lost in week 2 to the Vegas Raiders. We said, oh no, like that's them done. We said the same when the Bucs went and beat Green Bay. Oh, that Green Bay team, they're no good. They meet a good team and they lose it and they looked awful. Like, I say we, I don't think you and I think we as fans of the sport, a more general approach to it. Just when a team has a big loss, we all panic. And I'm not dealing with the Bucs. Yeah, look, there was signs. People came out. I mean, let me pull up some numbers. There was complaints about the Tampa Bay run defense, which obviously has been an absolute animal through the first, 9 weeks that it was now. That, they couldn't hold up against the Saints and Alvin Kamara, who's an absolute beast. They gave up 138 on the ground. Panic. That's happened 71 times already this year, which is 1 in every 2 games sees a team giving up those 138 yards on the ground. So, like, what? Because the Bucs, they're not allowed to do it too. I think that, yeah, Todd Bowles' over-aggressiveness sometimes can go back to bite him. That goes back to his days with Arizona, that versus elite teams, he can't really do that. He likes to just constantly bring pressure. And when teams are able to get ahead of you, you can't keep on bringing pressure. His game plan goes out the window, and we kind of saw that the other day where all of a sudden his secondary wasn't able to hold up because the Saints had turned to their passing game. So yeah, like again, the one probably area that I worry about that we might have seen the other day, and this is a new addition, was Antonio Brown being on the field. And the worry I'd have about that in particular is he had to get on the field somehow. And as a result, Bruce Arians, I think he was being held to ransom and had to take away what the Bucs had been doing. Their heavier tight end sets, I suppose. And, you lose a player there and you put Antonio Brown on, you have your 3 or even 4 wide receiver sets. but then that rules out play action, and then you just have to cover the wide receivers. It wasn't what they were doing through the first few weeks, especially with Bruce Arians. He loves to dial up a big play, and it just wasn't there for them the other day. So I don't know if you can make sense of my ramblings there. I just think there's so much that was being pointed out this week that was wrong. After just look, it happens.
Amen.
16-0, like, it's tough to do. We'll talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers later. Like, they were pushed by the Dallas Cowboys the other day, and we said, "Oh, banana peel can happen because Aiden Ho was difficult to do." Look, you're not going to win every single game, and it sucks for the Bucs. They do have a tougher slate. I'll talk about the Saints later or whatever, but I'm not going to panic. And they're playing Carolina this week, who I wish we were able to talk about. Christian McCaffrey, he's out for the weekend. His shoulder's at him now after his ankle. He only came back. And I mean, that is a big difference. They pushed Kansas City the other day, 33-31. McCaffrey had 151 total yards and 2 touchdowns, so he certainly would have been a problem for the Bucs. And it would have been good to see him against that rushing defense that I was just talking about. For a rebuilding team, the Panthers aren't too bad, but I think I'm going to stick with Tampa Bay for this game.
Yeah, Mark, you are absolutely right. And I am so thankful that you came out and just addressed that off the top, and that it just wasn't the Bucs night on Sunday Night Football. And that is perfectly okay. That happens. I remember there was a series in that game where Brady drove them down to the goal line, and they had 4 shots to get a touchdown, and they came up zilch against one of the worst red zone defenses in the entire league. It just happens. It's just one of those nights where nothing goes right. And what you do as a team, you bury that tape and you move on, and you just try to be better next week. I think everybody, like Mark said, coming out and saying, "Oh, this Bucs team is flawed. You guys are overreacting. You need to take a chill pill." Now, there are some legitimate concerns about how they've looked on primetime games this year. I mean, they're 1-2, and realistically, they should be 0-3 with how they've played in primetime. If you want to take up that hill to die on, that's totally fair, and I understand. This Bucs team is still good. They are going to make the postseason, and they'll probably even win a postseason game at that. They're still fine. People are overreacting and panicking. I'm taking the Bucs to win as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the prime time, because we actually did mention that kind of jokingly last week.
Yeah.
Long behold, but I suppose it's a different story. It's probably something we'll talk about when we talk about the Monday night game later and Kirk Cousins and stuff like that. That some quarterbacks have legitimate problems on prime time. It seems you can't say the same for Brady. He's clutch or whatever. Just it's been kind of fluky that it's happened like that, especially the Chicago game, because they deserve to win that one. Really, I mean, they didn't put themselves in a great position towards the end of the game, but it's a strange record to have. But again, we're both too sensible than to write off this Bucs team. Like, they could go out and beat anyone now coming up. They don't suddenly become an underdog against any of the big teams. Like, I'm looking forward to their next big challenge. And like I said, it's more that how it affects them going towards the playoffs. With it possibly could have ruled out the number 1 seed for them now if the Saints are able to navigate through the rest of the season as they should. But again, that's the story for later on. And for right now, I think all 3 of us are picking the Bucs in that game.
Yeah, amen to that. So let's move out of that game, the Tampa Bay Carolina game this weekend. And Mark, I want to go to one of the heavier matchups of the week. We're having our cake early on this show because I'm talking the 6-2 Seattle Seahawks going to Los Angeles to take on the 5-3 Rams. This is one of the more hyped up matchups of the week, especially considering how early on in the season, how we all praised the NFC West for, getting all these wins. But we all said we need to pump our brakes because this division is going to cannibalize itself at some point. And I think we're starting to reach that point because both these teams are kind of desperate for a win. The Seahawks are, coming off that very, very ugly loss to Buffalo where, full disclosure, Mark, they just looked flat out outclassed by the Bills, which isn't a statement I thought I would be saying after that game, but here we are. And the Rams are coming out of their bye week after getting embarrassed by the Dolphins a couple weeks ago. So both these teams are very hungry for a win right now. And I really think that we could be in store for a very weird one in Los Angeles. And here's why. This is a get-right game for the Rams offense. It should be because, you and I have talked to death about how bad the Seattle passing defense is. We have literally beaten this horse to death, buried it, dug it back up, and beat it some more. Now, full disclosure, I really feel like Seattle's defense kind of played well against the Bills. I feel like their pass rush finally woke up, which was an issue for them all season long. It's just that, they couldn't stop Josh Allen to save their lives. And I feel like that's going to be an issue going forward. And that the Rams offense has been kind of hit or miss so far this season. They'll either have games where they look really good or at least above average, like they did against Monday night a couple weeks ago against the Bears, or they're going to look terrible like they did against the Dolphins. It's been very hit or miss. So against this very bad pass defense, this should be a get right game for Jared Goff in that offense. This should be a game where they come out and throw it all over the yard. And if they struggle to do that, I think that's a very bad warning sign. It's a very, very bad sign if they struggle to do that. They should be able to throw it downfield. Robert Woods should, get all the passes in the world thrown to him. It should be a field day for Sean McVay in that offense. Now, speaking to the Rams defense, I really feel like they're one of the more underrated units in the league. They've been playing really good football, and they're the reason why they're winning games right now. And I feel like the Bills showed that while Russell Wilson isn't, invincible, he can be stopped. He's not going to turn the ball over 4 times every week like he did against the Bills. Granted, Russell Wilson has now had multiple turnovers over his last 2 games, and that's something to really look at. But I don't think he's going to have multiple turnovers in this one. It showed that he could be slowed down in theory, but in practice, that's a whole other issue. That's a whole other animal to try to deal with. And funny enough, I really feel like that this game is going to come down to Sean McVay having to coach up some kind of crazy offense like we all believe he can. And I think I warned you before the show started, I'm going out on an island on one of these picks. The Rams are my island pick. I'm taking them to beat Seattle and Los Angeles this week.
Yeah, way to go calling that one. I am really conflicted with this game because, the recency bias doesn't help either team, I suppose, because obviously we saw what happened in Miami and the Rams game. And then obviously what happened in Seattle was not unbelievable because for the exact reasons we said that Buffalo should be able to get respect last week, they went and got the win.
Mm-hmm.
And someone added me somewhat aggressively on Twitter giving out that I didn't put Buffalo up high enough in my power rankings. I said, no, that's what they should have done.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was a dream matchup, that Seattle defense. I just was shocked that it crumbled that badly in one game because why through 8 weeks were Seattle able to get away with it? And now all of a sudden it comes back to bite them, and the Bills are the team to unlock it.
Yeah.
It definitely gives me a lot to think about going forward with the Bills, especially going into the Arizona game.
Mm-hmm.
But where did Seattle go? Like Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, one of them was able to take over the game each week, it seemed, and they just weren't over the weekend. And except for that win, I would have easily picked Seattle. I think for excitement's sake, I'm going to stick with them anyway, between you and me. But I know the bookies favor you. They have the Rams winning this game by 2 points, which when I saw that originally, I thought that was a misprice. But I was like, no, hold on, it actually does make a lot of sense. The Rams have been somewhat under the radar, but with fans. But when you look to Vegas, they have them at 20-1 to win the Super Bowl right now, which is not bad. I think it might be the 8th or 9th rated team, or maybe even less. That it was Seattle slip up the other day seems to be the Rams' opportunity. And it makes it certainly a fascinating game. Much harder to pick it this week than it would have been a week ago. So I'll stick with Seattle just because Seattle seems to always be able to win games. It's something that I've mentioned to you before, that they're a conundrum when it comes to points differential and stuff, that they always seem to be able to win close games. And I don't know, the Rams came out hot. They kind of slowed up a little bit. Seattle came out blazing hot, or certainly Russell Wilson did. And for all their holes, they were able to get it done. I just think potentially they get it done against the Rams this week. But it's not a confident pick by me. I'd love to know what our friend Raider Rumble picked. If we pull it up here real quick, he actually went for the Rams himself. So
wow,
I'm on the island all of a sudden after you claiming to go on one.
Listen, I think I can explain why he picked it, because the Rams have actually dominated this matchup the last couple of years. If I remember correctly, the stat was they've won 4 of the last 5 against Seattle. And since Sean McVay took over in 2017, the Seahawks have only won 1 game in Los Angeles against these Rams. So the Rams have kind of had the Seahawks number the last couple of years. Now, granted, Seahawks have never been this good in terms of offense these last couple of years, but it's going to be a really good and fun close game to watch. But we're splitting on this one, and I expected that. I just didn't expect Mark to be on the island on this one. Wow.
And look at me, I'll be somewhat rooting for Seattle. I actually do think, though, maybe it's me being a bit of biased, being a Cardinals fan, that the Cardinals still get to play the Rams twice, whereas they've already beaten Seattle once. Then maybe I'm hoping if there's any division still on the line coming down the road, at least destiny would be within Arizona's own hands with the Rams versus if yeah, I mean they still have to play them, so that one has to play out. But maybe I'm just hoping for Seattle to win so that the Cardinals can control their own destiny.
Right.
If we want to move on from that one, maybe we'll pick up where I was leaving off a little bit on the last game and switch over our attention to an NFC West team that has fallen off the radar with San Francisco, and then who beat the Bucs the other day, the New Orleans Saints. I hope I don't come off that I'm gushing in this segment, but like what the Saints did, obviously the other day was phenomenal. Their defense was just excellent and gave the offense such phenomenal field position. And now to me, it's about, can this team push on? Now we have to, bring it in and say, like, having Michael Thomas back was obviously huge for the team. And you'd have to imagine that they learned how to perform without him. So him being back is a bonus. I mean, obviously he set the league record, 149 receptions last year. This year he is, however few that he has, missing all those games. But in the meantime, they've brought a ton of talent into the squad. I mean, even Emmanuel Sanders and Marquez Callaway were returning to this game. So they had their best wide receiver core since week 1 or whatever it was. But in the game the other day, just it came to show 12 guys caught a pass in that game. On the ground, 7 guys had a rushing attempt. Taysom Hill, of all people, led with 54 yards. But then you flip it, and then Alvin Kamara, who I said at the top of the show, is an absolute beast. He's leading the team in receptions. The running back has 60, whereas Emmanuel Sanders is second with 30, So the team is extremely balanced on offense. Now I obviously want to see some consistency in the defense, because you have to say what happened the other day is the exception and not the rule. I mean, like, they're saying how they were able to pick off Tom Brady with ease, but I mean, like, they've picked off Tom Brady now 5 times this year. Tom Brady has only had 200 interceptions in the other 7 games that weren't the 2 against the Saints. And I mean, that secondary itself in New Orleans has been hit or miss. I mean, like, Marshawn Lattimore seems lost sometimes, and Malcolm Jenkins only now is kind of coming to form, having returned from Philadelphia this year. And then on the defensive line, we talked a few weeks about how Marcus Davenport coming back. He's the glue that's been missing, clearly. I mean, Cam Jordan is still quiet, but Trey Hendrickson is third in sacks in the league at the nose tackle position. He's only behind Aaron Donald and Myles Garrett, which is phenomenal. And I suppose it all looks good, but in the 3 previous games that the Saints had, I mean, let me read them out. 3-point wins over the Bears, the Panthers, and Chargers. And the Bears and Chargers was in overtime. So I don't want us to get too far away from that, but there's certainly a confidence or a swagger that's now with New Orleans, and it's whether they can push on with that. Their remaining schedule has only one winning team or team with a winning record on it, which is Kansas City.
Oh, that's favorable.
They don't have to win all the remaining games, so forgive them for losing that. But at the other side, there's plenty of bogey teams: Atlanta, Denver, Philadelphia, if you want to call them that, Minnesota, and Carolina. I mean, they're losing teams, but they're those losing teams that have kind of been a conundrum themselves. So it's all positive for New Orleans right now. But let's not forget where they were this time a week ago when they were coming off the back of some weird wins. Just like one win is great, just like one loss can be forgotten for Tampa Bay, and just, we call that the exception. We have to think the same for New Orleans. They're definitely playoff bound. The worries that we had about them after week 2 or whatever it was have vanished. They're extremely balanced. They've learned in the meantime how to not rely on Michael Thomas, and they're all the better for it. And an exciting team going forward if, Drew Brees can hold up, because that's the other thing. I don't see Taysom Hill being a starter quality quarterback. I know there's that whole argument. So I think it's very important that Drew Brees does stay healthy, and it's just worth mentioning at 41 years old. Like, yeah, the arm is falling off. I read the stat the other day that he's only attempted a handful of passes that are between 20 and 40 yards, depth. So he is keeping them somewhat shallow, his passes, which just isn't his style of play. And, teams might start to figure that out as we go forward and, pressure him a bit more, try to get to him faster so that, seeing as he's going to be going for those short passes, I know how to play it.
Right.
That, yeah, again, positive for New Orleans. I'd expect them to win this game, but it's all about what happens in the future for them and not just San Francisco, what's in front of them this weekend.
Yeah, I'm kind of bummed because, when the schedule was dropped, this was probably the game I think I most look forward to was this rematch of what was arguably the game of the year last year in New Orleans. It just sucks that San Fran's been ravaged by injuries, and we're not going to talk about that anymore because we talk about it almost every week. But yeah, this should be a game where New Orleans comes in and handles business. And it really doesn't matter what they did against the Bucs at this point. It matters what they do going forward. What do they do when they get to Atlanta? Like Mark mentioned, they got to keep this momentum up if they're serious about, winning the South, and not just winning the South, but winning the first seed. It's so much more important because only the first seed gets a bye this year, people. Only the first seed. And if I remember correctly, Mark, the NFC playoff structure, like a bunch of the teams are only separated by one loss now, right? If I remember correctly. Yeah, Mark's nodding his head. Yeah. So yeah, one loss, like if New Orleans just suddenly drops a fluky game to somebody and another team wins, suddenly New Orleans is on the outside looking in at the first seed. They can't afford to, slip up here. They got to keep the foot on the pedal, and they should do it against the Niners, and I'm taking them to win that game.
Yeah, I mean, again, with the playoff seeding, it is super close right now, but that's to be expected so close in the year. I mean, any team can still think that they are in with a wild card shot. I mean, yeah, it's getting a bit more tricky as we go forward, but I suppose that's why the number one seed is so valuable and why it's typically in play until week 15, 16, or 17, really. The Ravens obviously had it sewn up, it seemed, last year. But yeah, I just think that we didn't even give credit to San Francisco, but obviously the injuries have ruled them out. But I'm just looking to see how much of that confidence finds its way into this game for New Orleans, because if they are sick, and it's just the way the players reacted the other day, the videos on the field, obviously, of James Winston, the W, which is still cringy. I don't care if you have a win, it's still cringy.
Like,
but then in the locker room
no.
afterwards, they're all dancing and tops are off and they're just partying. And it's obviously great to have the presence of Michael Thomas in there as well, because, now they feel complete versus like just looking over their shoulder and thinking, oh, well, we're still due this guy back. What will happen then? I mean, it's not a guarantee that they play as well this week. That's the other thing. I mean, it can always start to hiccup on you. I mean, they might have just got revved up for like Marshawn Lattimore was to meet Mike Evans. They don't have the best relationship, those two, and he loves not having or giving up any yards to him. So, I mean, maybe it was a perfect recipe for the New Orleans Saints to play well the other day. But yeah, we'll get off this game now. But I think that there was definitely some brilliant signs for New Orleans, and it's just it'll be exciting to track them going forward now.
Yeah, amen to that. So that's it for the New Orleans San Fran game. But let's move on to a game that's probably also going to be a little lopsided in the early afternoon, because the 1-7 Jaguars, who have lost 7 in a row, are going to Green Bay. Oh, those poor Jaguars, to take on the 6-2 Packers. And you know what? If you didn't watch the Jaguars game last week when they took on the Texans, I don't blame you. But if you happen to watch it, you would know that rookie quarterback Jake Luton, I practiced that name so much, and I don't know why I just finally messed it up for the first time. Jake Luton started his first game in the NFL, the rookie out of Oregon State. And you know what? All things considered, a mid-round guy who only started 10 games in college, all things considered, I think he did well enough. He gave the Jaguars a chance to win against the Texans, and at that point, that's all you can really ask for, in my opinion. I think he played well enough. Well, the problem is that he's going to be starting again this week for the Jaguars as they go and take on a Green Bay team that's, in my opinion, despite their record, they're kind of out to prove something right now because they're coming off their bye week. But before their bye week, the last time we saw this Packers team, they lost that embarrassing game to the Vikings, where Dalvin Cook had arguably the best game of his career, 4 touchdowns, over 200 yards. Their defense couldn't stop anybody, and their offense just could not get rolling against a Vikings team that was really struggling at that point. So I feel like the Packers are going to come into this game, Mark, looking to prove something, looking to tee off on an inferior opponent and pound their chest and plant their flag kind of game. Now the Jaguars defense, it's one of the worst in the league. It's not dead last in any category, but it's in the bottom 3 of most. So I'm really expecting Aaron Rodgers to come out and have one of his vintage, turn back the clock, throw for 350 yards and 3 touchdown game kind of thing. And for the Packers defense that I had some questions about the last couple weeks, this should be kind of a get right game for them, in my opinion, in that if they're struggling to stop Jake Luton and this Jaguars offense, if they're letting them run up and down the field on them, in fact, if it's a close game in the fourth quarter, I would be stunned. If Jake Luton's driving just like he was last week with a chance to win the game for the Jags, I would personally be stunned. But this should be a game where the Packers handle business early and easily and take care of a rookie quarterback. And I see him winning big in this one. This shouldn't even be close. And if it is, we're going to have a come to Jesus meeting about the Packers.
Yeah, yeah. Do you know what? I'm glad that you're approaching that game with that kind of mindset, because this is exactly what I'm talking about when we're saying Tampa Bay, like after a big loss, like do we pull the plug? Whereas you're saying, oh yeah, a couple of weeks ago I had those question marks about the Packers defense, but now look, you move on when you go and dump on the 49ers on Thursday Night Football. You know that they are just playing extremely well right now. Like I saw Davante Adams's yards per game total there yesterday. Something I was thinking it's like 120 yards per game, which is phenomenal. He's just far above everyone else right now. That they are playing absolute lights out, and the Jags just realistically ain't going to pose a problem. Like they've completely disappeared back. The only kind of relevancy they have right now is whether they can find a way to rob the number 1 pick off the Jets, since they're going to win so few games. So yeah, it's an easy one for me. Obviously, Green Bay.
Yeah, same here. And that's all the Jags really have to look forward to, is what draft pick you're going to get. That's all they really got. But like I said, Packers, if you don't handle business, we going to have a talking. We will be talking about you. So, Mark, where would you like to go next?
Yeah, I suppose there's another game kind of like that. The Philadelphia versus the New York Giants, where, look, pull up what we said about Washington and the importance of beating the Giants last week, and how they need to keep head and shoulders above the Giants and Cowboys, and just put it to Philadelphia. Like now that the Washington football team lost last week, Philadelphia, okay, like they're still within touching distance of Washington, who I believe have a game in hand. Like they can definitely come back, but Philadelphia, look, are they getting much more healthy? You can argue, yes, they have. I mean, I read a quote from a Giants player the other day saying this is like preparing for a completely different team than we faced a few weeks ago, whatever it was, 3 weeks ago, since Philadelphia played the Giants. That like they're just getting that bit healthier. And I suppose the other thing that comes with Philadelphia to me is like Travis Fulgham, who we talked about a few weeks ago, is this guy that had hopped around a couple of teams, and he's with the Detroit Lions, with Green Bay, even as soon as this summer, and he wasn't getting that kind of respect. But I mean, at the end of the day, he's 5th in yards per game right now as Travis Fulgham, which like he's obviously only after coming onto the scene, but in the 5 games or whatever that he started, he's 5th behind top players like behind Davante Adams, DK Metcalf, DeAndre Hopkins, and Julio Jones. So it's like, okay, not that I'm going to say he's a flash in the pan, but I know he's not up to those kind of guys, and that's not what I'm saying. But at least they have some options now. Like, there's no point just breaking down Philadelphia each week and saying, oh, Carson Wentz needs to right the wrongs, that Doug Peterson needs to just make better play calls or whatever. It's we know the division. We know what's ahead of Philadelphia. We know what they have to do to win the division, and sorting out the Giants. Sorry, you guys don't know what that means. I'm led to believe actually they have to beat the Giants. Sorry, do you know it's sorting out is a phrase that I use over here. And I was talking to some Americans one day, and after 50 minutes, they turned around to me and said, "I haven't a clue what you mean every time you say sort someone out."
I thought I knew what you meant, but I was wrong. Okay.
Sort someone out, yeah, to me is like oh my God, I can't even explain what it's like. It's like you just have to deal with them, and just file it away. So they need to file the Giants away, I suppose.
Oh, okay, okay, I got you.
To bring it back, Daniel Jones, obviously that remarkable stat that was going around during the week, that He has 5 career wins. 4 of them were against Washington, and he's only beaten one other team, which is Tampa Bay. I mean, I don't expect him to be able to pull a 6th win up, and it to be against Philadelphia. So I'm going with Philadelphia this weekend.
Amen to that. And I'm glad we had an impromptu section of colloquialism with Mark on this episode of the show today. But Mark's right. This Giants team and the NFC East as a whole, they're only going to win games in division. And I just don't see the Giants mustering one against Philly. I really like what this Giants defense is doing. I just can't trust Daniel Jones. Gun to my head, I wouldn't trust that kid. I just wouldn't. So I'm taking the Eagles as well. It should be. It's going to be close. It's going to be ugly, but Eagles should handle business against the Giants.
Yeah, and I mean, if you want to go to the Washington game next, it might make sense because.
How did you know I was going to go there?
Oh, lovely! Because it was going to my head with what happened last week. Was it the Giants winning or Washington losing? I mean, I think it was a bit of both. Honestly, that the Giants definitely got something going on offense, but the Washington was too slow, and obviously after Kyle Allen, which I presume is going to be your jumping off point to preview the Washington Detroit game.
That's where I was going to lead into, because both of these teams suffered, issues at quarterback last week in terms of injuries, but specifically towards Washington was more severe as Kyle Allen suffered. It feels like for the billionth time this season where we had to sit through a guy suffering a dislocated ankle on the field, which is, it's just, oh God, I am so tired of seeing guys break their ankles at this point. It is just ridiculous. And Kyle Allen's done for the year, but thankfully they said it's not as severe as like what Dak Prescott went through in Dallas. So he should hopefully make a full recovery and be back by springtime for Washington. But right now that means Alex Smith is going to be their starter. And as much as I've liked Alex Smith and as much as we talked about us pulling for him, that terrifies me because I just don't want to see him get hurt. We've all been in Alex Smith's corner. We just don't want to see him get hurt. Now, he did play the majority of the game last week, and I think he did okay considering that was the first full major game he's played in. He threw for, 300 yards, 1 touchdown. He did throw for 3 picks, though, but I'm going to attribute a lot of that to the rust that he has to knock off. So he's going to be making his first start in a game since he broke his leg in, I think it was November of 2017 at this point. So it's been a long...
2018.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Mark. Thank you. It's been a long road for Mr. Alex Smith. But the Lions are dealing with quarterback issues as well because Matt Stafford apparently suffered a concussion in the game against the Vikings. He was cleared for return, but he didn't exactly come back in. It's something to keep an eye on this week, especially considering how ferocious that pass rush for Washington has been over the entire course of the season. But I would attribute that more to a long laundry list of issues that's been plaguing the Lions so far. Matt Stafford's been in and out due to COVID, and he hasn't exactly been playing well when he has been in for a variety of reasons. Then you factor in Kenny Golladay, who missed this last week, and there was talk that they could put him on IR. They haven't yet as of this recording, but it just goes to show how injury rattled he's been that they're even discussing putting him on IR at this point. And when he is not on the field for the Lions, they are a vastly inferior team. They're basically crippled without Kenny Golladay, their number 1 wide receiver on the field. And the Lions as a whole, I found this stat from The Athletic, specifically Greg Auman over at The Athletic. The Lions dropped 7.22% of every 100 pass attempts, Mark, which leads the league. The next closest is Green Bay, and they dropped one about 6.79% out of every 100 passes. So the Lions are literally dropping the season through their hands. They're literally letting it go through their hands. That's the way the season is going for them. And they desperately need a win right now. Because if you remember a couple weeks ago, we were all saying, oh, the Lions are kind of frisky. Ooh, what can they do? They're right in the midst of this hunt. And now they've lost 2 in a row, and they're staring down a barrel of a team that could beat them in Washington. I really think Washington could go into Detroit and win this game. It's just, if Detroit is to be taken seriously, and if Matt Patricia is going to keep his job, quite frankly, in Detroit, they need to win this game. And I'm taking the Lions in Detroit to win it. Yeah.
Interesting, because as I clear my throat, I had to take down some notes there. Obviously, there's a lot to unbox almost going into this game. It is super interesting because Alex Smith coming back in, I mean, he was the best quarterback on the roster as far as I was concerned. Ron Rivera was just trying to be too smart about it and play to the future. And I mean, it speaks a lot to Alex Smith and his story that when he comes in the other day and he threw 2 crucial interceptions, I know he blamed him for doing it. They were just happy to see him on the field.
Yeah.
he still went 24 to 32, 75% completion rate, that is, for 325 yards. I mean, like the first game when he came in against the Rams, he admitted it was on my mind that I had the leg issue. Whereas now he's saying, okay, I'm able to be comfortable. And yeah, he came in off the bench, so he mightn't have been as prepared to win that game, but he still got them back into it. And that play by Terry McLaurin, well, he did all the work, really, Terry McLaurin, to, what was it, a 68-yard touchdown where he caught the ball in double coverage and somehow broke free of them. But like Kyle Allen can't make that throw is the important thing to know. Like it was just Alex Smith, he had no right to get it in to Terry McLaurin, but I suppose he's experienced enough that he was able to. And that's kind of exciting going forward if you're a Washington fan, because you can expect to get a few bigger plays and just a bit of a more competent quarterback. Sure, yeah, he's going to be a bit stiff, but I just think that's important to have him in there, and it gives you your best chance of winning than they've had all year, and especially since we said that the wide receiver core is getting a bit healthier, and hopefully that drop rate does come down. Yeah, but I suppose the underlying story to it all is Ron Rivera hasn't ruled out Dwayne Haskins coming back in. I don't think it's ever going to happen. I don't think it's smart. They're just kind of hoping that Alex Smith can work the magic that he did with Patrick Mahomes, that learning from Alex Smith. But I mean, I feel like that was probably to do with Patrick Mahomes just being a magician, and maybe Alex Smith gets too much praise for having Patrick Mahomes sit behind him for his rookie year.
Yeah.
And then, like you said about them, has gone down. Yeah, it's worrying. I mean, they brought in Mohamed Sanu this week. They signed him. I think he might have spent. They brought him in last week anyway, and they went and signed him. So it obviously is a bit worrying for the team. And the word you used was, we thought they were a bit frisky, and we certainly did. And it's something that I thought about this week, that I know I said to you before, I used to compare the Cardinals and Detroit like hand in hand. I was like, this is what the Cardinals normally are to me. This team that has a bunch of potential, but they're just not reaching it. And watching it now from afar with what's going on in Detroit, like it's heartbreaking. I don't know how Matt Patricia keeps his job at this rate, because like there's too many excuses, drop passes or what have you, that keep him away from it, that their talent was too good. I mean, Matt Stafford seems to have gone backwards. I mean, yeah, he was ruled out of the game with a concussion the other day, but it's just all over the place. And I think they're just going to have to start again, it seems, really.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's sad. I want to tell you the stat that I saw earlier this week, and I don't know if you saw this one as well, Mark, but Matt Patricia's Lions over these past 2.5 years, they've only won 2 games in the NFC North. Like, do you know how bad you have to be to do that? Like, realistically, to do that over 2.5 years to only win 2 NFC North games.
I'll give them some credit, because the NFC North, it's never been considered the best division of football, but I'd always have it in the top 3. You know, the Vikings always give the Packers a run for their money, and then Chicago Bears, I can't explain obviously how they do it, but they seem to stay competitive a lot of the time. I won't blame Detroit for that. It's kind of hard luck. And again, it's exactly what I point to the Cardinals, that the Cardinals and Rams have been the punching bag a lot of the time in the NFC West. So I'll let Detroit away with it. Before we move off that game, I know you came off the top and talked about Kyle Allen's injury, Hayden, but like, where's the outcry for Kyle Allen? Like, it was wall-to-wall coverage when Dak Prescott had an ankle injury because he didn't get paid before it happened. And I mean, like, Kyle Allen now, he was a second stringer that potentially should have really been a third stringer, except for the head coach, Ron Rivera, really liked him. And it's with so many quarterbacks coming on stream, like you might see Matt Stafford or someone like that traded if the right quarterback falls. I mean, I don't think I'm calling that so much as I've just read unhappy, upset Detroit fans saying we should have offloaded him already. But yeah, I mean, Kyle Allen may never play another snap because there's just such competition for quarterbacks that if you're this, like, he's a fringe guy, I suppose, yeah, he would replace a Chase Daniels, who is the Detroit backup. But I kind of felt for Kyle Allen the other day. It's not like he's a cakewalk to ever play another NFL snap.
Hey, as long as Ron Rivera has a job, Kyle Allen will have a job. Guarantee it. So...
All right, actually, there you go. What am I saying? Kyle Allen actually will probably stay with Washington till
Yeah,
whoever
so I
won.
feel like we've paid way more attention to this game than most people will the entire weekend. So,
I
Mark.
actually didn't make my pick, yeah. So
Oh God, I'm so sorry. I'm so
I'm
sorry.
actually I'm actually going with Washington because I just
Really?
think that
Okay.
they got me last week. Like
Mhm.
I felt a bit screwed when Washington didn't win. That I don't know why I'm going with them other than in these kind of games in the past I've leaned towards Detroit and I've picked them.
Mhm.
I'm just going with a different approach because it's the definition of stupidity is to keep doing something and expect it to change. And I know I fell for that too often with Atlanta that I'm going to jump ship on Detroit this week and I'll go with Washington.
Wow. Okay. All right. I respect it. I respect it. Like I said, Washington could easily win this game. That's the kind of space Detroit is in right now. It's not crazy, and it's not really calling an upset for Mark to come out here and say Washington's going to win. It's totally within the realm of possibility, and we're splitting on this one. I'm a little surprised. Little surprised.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I'm surprised myself, especially with how Washington. I'm kind of just going with Alex Smith
Mm,
and the week that he will have now to prepare for the game. I think I'm going with that. And there's just that bit of uncertainty in Detroit right now that it's been
that's
panic
fair.
stations for a while. So
Yeah, that's fair.
another place where there's panic stations obviously is well Sunday night football this week is whether it's going to happen. But New England,
Well played.
I'm so happy that we said on last week's show that if the New York Jets are to win a game this year, it'll be against New England
We called
because
it. We called it.
I'm glad that, like, geez, am I glad? I wish that it was on my record that I called the Jets last week.
Hmm.
But, in terms of playing for a winning record at the end of the year and our picks, which you can obviously see on our Twitter pages, that, oh man, like that was worrying from the New England Patriots the other day. And what really struck me with the game was Cam Newton's face throughout the performance. Like,
Hmm.
he's known as a happy, bubbly, cocky quarterback who's always kind of, like it almost winds you up as a spectator watching it. That must be so irritating to play against this guy that just knows or thinks that he's better than you, and then he's throwing the ball over your head and for touchdowns. That when I saw him the other day, it looked like his confidence was gone. I mean, it did come back after the game. He's doing some interviews and that like that, or sorry, he's doing some interviews, but like, yeah, that's worrying for me because
Hmm.
there's nothing on that roster other than Cam Newton on the offense, really. I mean, injuries and all, Nikhil Harry and stuff out, Julian Edelman, that he has to be even better. He has to be Russell Wilson esque in his team, to elevate them. And it's not happening. And it hasn't happened since he came back from COVID.
Hmm.
So it was a really unimpressive performance from New England. And I'd worry against him going against Baltimore, who played in the second half against the Colts last week as kind of gave us an insight into what they could be. They could return to some kind of form. I guess I'm saying I got quite confident watching Baltimore the other day. We had picked against one another in that game, and
Hmm.
even though I like Indianapolis, they didn't look like the same team when it came down to the stretch in that game, and Baltimore easily dealt with them, you could say. So I think they turned a corner, Baltimore, and playing against New England now on prime time is exactly what they need to show to people that haven't been following the league too intensely.
Hmm.
They'll be fooled if Baltimore comes out and just has this remarkable game and Lamar Jackson is clicking. And I think it could happen. That's New England is just playing so poorly that Baltimore could tee off on them and then have the national media talking again.
Yeah. Mark, can I tell you this thing that I saw earlier? It was a quote by Lamar Jackson. He was on the Rich Eisen show on Wednesday, and he revealed something that nobody had really thought about before. He said, so far this season, when he gets up to the line of scrimmage, the opposing defenders are already up there calling the exact play that the Ravens are going to run. That defenders already know what the Ravens are going to do before the Ravens do it. And that could go into what we've talked about. Have the Ravens been figured out? It might just be that they're still kind of running the same thing they ran last year and people are just ready for it now. And that if we're talking like the Colts have apparently done this, if they're getting up to the line of scrimmage because they held the Ravens in check for the most part in that game on defense, we know damn well Bill Belichick knows what's coming. We know it. Even though the Patriots are struggling, he's going to understand what the Ravens are going to do. So I really feel like that's something to watch. Can the Ravens basically try to become something a little bit different? That way defenses are a little bit more unprepared for what might come. That could be something to watch. But I'm with Mark as well. This should be a game that the Ravens really kind of return to form. The Patriots are just that bad right now, and I'm taking the Ravens on Sunday Night Football.
It's a really interesting point that you make that, because
Mm-hmm.
the one thing you can never say about New England is that they're poorly coached. And I mean, the one
Amen.
stat that always says it to me is your flags, how many penalties have you given away? And of course, New England is bottom of that list. And it's just that attention to detail that Bill Belichick is obviously known for, that, yeah, it gives them a chance against Baltimore. I missed that with Rich Eisen. And certainly I think that's a bit silly for Lamar Jackson to be confirming to other teams. I mean, like, whatever about them knowing the play, now you've told everyone, yeah, you're right, you do know our plays, and we are very easy to figure out. I mean, yeah, that went across my radar, and the likes of a Bill Belichick would listen to that and say, great, that hunch that I had, it's right.
Yeah, it's kind of like a red herring, it's one of the things you don't do as a quarterback. You don't confirm, like, literally nobody was talking about that to begin with. And Lamar just comes out and goes, yeah, they know our plays. I'm like, bro, what are you doing? What are you doing, bro? Like, don't say that. But yeah, that's just kind of where the Ravens are right now. It's just that they're a little bit predictable on offense, and teams know what's coming and they know how to slow it down. So it's up to them. And the onus is on them. They still have the entire second half of the season to get unpredictable, get a little different. It's okay to mix things up and try something new, as long as the other teams don't know what's coming. But they should handle business against New England. They should, hopefully. Hopefully. Okay. Mark, I want to go to a team next, if you're okay with it, of course, where I talked about this team a couple weeks ago. And I said, this team is in euphoria. This team is no longer in euphoria. They have evolved into pure ecstasy. They are in pure 100% heavenly bliss, Mark. I am, of course, talking about the 5-3 Miami Dolphins, who have won 4 in a row, playing host to the 2-6 Chargers, who have lost 2 in a row. This is heaven for Dolphins fans right now. I don't think I've ever seen Dolphins fans this happy in my lifetime. Even when they went to the playoffs a couple years ago, Mark, they are ecstatic. They don't know what to do with their hands. They're just so excited about everything right now. And they're clicking on literally every tiny little thing. Their defense is playing good. Their special teams is one of the best in the entire league. Their offense finally got back on track against your Cardinals last week, even though I know you hoped that they wouldn't, but they did. It's all coalescing into this really solid looking team right now. And to me, that screams more than anything about good coaching. And I really want to take this time right now to come on the show and pound the table for Brian Flores to be mentioned in the Coach of the Year discussion, because I feel like he is doing one hell of a job in Miami right now. And he has got whatever he is cooking down there, it is working beautifully. They are truly building something special down there in Miami. Now, granted, it isn't a finished product. They still got a long ways to go. They don't have a healthy running back for starters. All of their running backs are hurt. We still need to see more consistency from Tua Tagovailoa. Now, against your Cardinals, Mark, that he did pretty well for the most part. He did a lot better than he did in his first week. So we just need him to keep stringing together good performances that the Dolphins are going to be taken seriously this year. But right now, for what they're offering, you can't overlook them. You can't just say they're a fluky team. You can't just say they're getting lucky. They're beating teams, and they're proving that they're good. Maybe not. When I say good, I don't mean that they're like a 10-win team. I don't mean that, but they're just not to be overlooked. If you overlook them, you're going to get caught lacking, and you're going to get handed an L. The Chargers, we've talked to death about them, blowing leads. They can't win a close game to save their lives. It's just a truly mental thing for them at this point. In fact, I guarantee you this, Mark. Mark my words. I guarantee you this. This game will come down to the fourth quarter. It'll come down to the last 3 minutes of the fourth quarter in Miami, just because that's how the Chargers play games at this point. It's going to come down to the last couple minutes, and I'm willing to bet it's going to come down to Justin Herbert having to make a throw and some crazy shenanigans happen, and the Chargers lose the game, because that's just what happens these last couple weeks. But I really think the game is going to be decided in this category. In the last game, when against the Cardinals, Tua Tagovailoa, when he wasn't blitzed, he went 14 of 17 for 189 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's important to note, because the Chargers blitz on the least amount of percentage in the entire league. They only blitz on 13.8% of dropbacks. So if the early theory holds, remember that's a very small sample size we have of Tua. If this early theory holds and the Chargers don't blitz him, he might tear their behinds up. Now, you have to remember that Joey Bosa for the Chargers is still dealing with a concussion right now. We don't know if he's going to play. So if their premier pass rusher isn't going to play, that just adds a whole nother world of hurt for the Chargers right now. But Miami has all the momentum. In fact, I think they're one of the teams in the league that has the most momentum right now, funny enough. And they should hopefully handle a close game in Miami against the Chargers and finish them off and get another win under their belt.
Yeah, it's great that you come in with the momentum, because I feel like the Chargers can't get any momentum because they've been playing so well and losing games that whatever about momentum, some people don't believe in it, but like the Chargers still, they don't need it to perform.
Mm-hmm.
This is a super close game. I mean, like the win-loss record is what points towards going for Miami, who absolutely deserve respect. Like I put them into the top half of my power rankings this week, and I kind of had to acknowledge that that's where they're at. But at least in the week before that, before they beat the Cardinals and after they'd beaten the Rams, I did acknowledge, are they a team that can make a playoff push?
Mm-hmm.
And I was forecasting that because I did see that they were able to get there. I mean, that they are a decent enough team. And I know I was upset with them switching over from Ryan Fitzpatrick. And I don't just jump onto the band saying, oh, Brian Flores knew what he was doing, that Tua was ready to come out. Yeah, Tua is a good player, but it still doesn't justify benching Ryan Fitzpatrick unless
Mm-hmm.
you're totally worried about him falling off a cliff, which he obviously has done in the past. And we said that was going to be his problem at some point. But I mean, he was still winning. The team was still as good with Ryan Fitzpatrick as it is now. So I was kind of surprised to wake up the next day to all this Tua hype, and especially from a team like Miami, it almost seems a bit like superficial that the people have been waiting all year, maybe even the
Mm-hmm.
last 18 months to write some Tua content, and
Yeah.
now that they're able to, they're like his odds to win the Rookie of the Year were slashed the other day. He went from 20-1 to 5-1. Like that was a
Okay.
huge jump.
Okay. Y'all need to chill. Y'all need to chill.
Well,
Like,
you need to chill, because if you look at his numbers the other day, and they did beat the Cardinals, and it was one of those losses that, as good as I felt when the Cardinals beat Seattle, I felt as bad with the loss to Miami, because it was a game that they shouldn't have lost, really. Like,
mm-hmm.
not that I wasn't impressed with Miami. I mean, they're a good team, but when you look at their numbers, I mean, total yardage was the Cardinals had 442, Miami had 312. That's 130 yards in the difference. Like, whatever about their offense, I need to look in. I haven't done it for this show, so maybe I'll pay attention to it this week. Maybe it's not a great one if the defensive line for the Chargers doesn't have Joey Bosa,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know if their rushing game is there. And it's like, yeah, if they're able to rely, look, Joe Burrow's doing it in Cincinnati, but like I think Miami is great, and I do see them as a genuine contender now, especially with who they play in the AFC East, that they could nab a seventh wildcard spot. And I would be worried if I was one of those teams that kind of is around there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're not in the absolute thick of things, but when you look at who's coming up and you kind of project who they can beat and stuff, like they should be able to at least compete, which is amazing for them, especially like where that franchise is coming from. But
Yeah.
I think it's a super close game. I don't know who you're going for.
Oh, give me them Dolphins. Give me them Dolphins all day, every day. Give me them Dolphins.
Yeah, I think I would like to pick the Chargers,
Mm-hmm.
and I I genuinely believe that the Chargers can win this game, and it's not being salty that Miami beat the Cardinals the other day. I just think that the Chargers show up in every game, and
They
it doesn't
do.
matter. It's kind of, it's frustrating to see them match their opponent,
Mm-hmm.
but only match them and not beat them. Even though the other day, it's like you can't even blame them hardly for that touchdown that was called a touchdown, and then it was brought back on a very close play. But last week I said that Vegas to me is a great gauge on who is a playoff contender, and the Chargers almost got them.
Yep. Amen.
So I think that the Chargers are better than we're giving them credit for. I'm going to play it safe this week and pick Miami, but that absolutely could be circled for me as a game that I've picked wrong, and I already
Agreed.
feel like I know it all right. But I feel like I just want to play it safe with Miami. They're the hot hand right now.
Hmm.
But again, it's less than a field goal. The bookies have this one out, so it's definitely close.
That's fair. And I totally get that. It's just, I think I said it last week that this Chargers team is good enough to get leads in these games against good opponents, teams that they even shouldn't even be competing against, like the Saints and the Chiefs. They were hanging in there solely because of the greatness of Justin Herbert. It's just in the last 2 or 3 minutes, some weird, crazy cosmic event is going to happen and they're just going to lose. It just happens almost every week at this point. It's beyond anything we could talk about or even try to comprehend. It's just Chargers at this point. It's just what can you do? You know?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm glad that we digested that game as we gave it the time that it should, because I do think it's super interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely I almost feel like the Chargers are being robbed of being a playoff team, but I also
Yeah.
almost attribute that to Anthony Lynn, and that's the reason I picked against the Chargers last week. That it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb that he is a bad coach, but
Mm-hmm.
you just see him frantically pacing the sideline at the end of games. I just think the composure isn't there to pull these ones out of the bag.
Yep. I'm with you. 100%. I'm with you.
On a not so competitive game to me, but in the vein of these rookie quarterbacks, because that's obviously a massive rookie versus rookie, and it's whoever actually wins that Miami game, it's going to be a huge amount of hype around either Justin Herbert or Tua Tagovailoa.
Mm-hmm.
But up in Pittsburgh at the same
Oh.
time, the Steelers will be taking on Joe Burrow, and I think that Pittsburgh's offense could honestly take the day off and just leave it up to the defense, because they're not giving Joe Burrow a chance in this game. I should start off by saying that Joe Burrow has faced Indianapolis and has faced the Baltimore Ravens, which also have good defense, just for what it's worth. I mean, Cincinnati lost to Indianapolis, who's number one in total yards on defense, by 4 points.
Mm-hmm.
Baltimore, number 8 in total yards, they lost to them by 10 points or whatever. But, I mean, Joe Burrow has shown that he can navigate some defenses, but I just think that Pittsburgh's way of doing things in particular is just a nightmare for Joe Burrow. I mean, Joe Burrow's tied in sacks, second in sacks with Daniel Jones, just behind Carson Wentz with 28. Pittsburgh obviously leads that category in defense. And Joe Burrow again is a great thrower of the ball. His accuracy is 67% right now. Pittsburgh gives up the lowest completion rate at 57%. So I just don't think that he's going to be able to get going and get clicking. I mean, again, I might be being unfair there, but I just think that this defense is just a nightmare matchup. And I know, look at how Dallas was able to put up against it last week. That'd be huge and be a huge confidence booster and whatever you want. It'd just be huge if Joe Burrow was able to put up points. I don't see a person, and I hate to ride off a team. And if I'm riding off anyone this week, the closest I'm coming to is Cincinnati, and that's not a wise thing to do because they have been so good in these games this year.
Mm-hmm.
But we're kind of looking at Pittsburgh's offense, and I've already talked about what New Orleans has been able to do now that Michael Thomas is back, but they have 11 other guys on the field that they're able to throw to on Sunday night. That Pittsburgh's offense kind of learned the same lesson that they relied too heavily in the Antonio Brown years of going to Antonio Brown, and now it's way more balanced. They have 5 guys that have between 3 and 5 touchdowns. I mean, that's they go to the same pool of 5 guys, which is great to have.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's 4 or so guys that all are within 10 targets atop the depth chart of each other. Chase Claypool, Juju, Deontay Johnson, Eric Ebron, all between, I think it's like 40 and 50 targets each. So like they're being way more balanced, and that's a nightmare to plan for. Like I know you're putting your best cornerback on Juju, but like it's almost like the Seattle conundrum that if you go after Tyler Lockett, then DK Metcalf can go off. Well, right now it seems like if you plan against Chase Claypool for Pittsburgh, then Deontay Johnson is going to be the one that you lose to. And then obviously you have James Conner, who wasn't fantastic against Dallas the other day, but he has a rushing and receiving touchdown in 6 of 9 games this year, which is phenomenal, because if those other 5 guys that I was talking to you about are ruled out, James Conner steps up,
Right. It's weird because funny enough, I had the same exact thought the other night when I was looking at that game. I was like, you know what? If Pittsburgh's got some guys that are banged up, like Big Ben, who hurt his knees in that game against Dallas, if they got some guys who aren't feeling their best, maybe just sit them this week. I mean, you've earned yourself a bye because they had their one early. That's not to discredit Cincinnati. Like, we all know Cincinnati, they're going to be something in a couple of years, and they're proven to be. They got a lot more fight in the tank than I thought they would have this year, and they've hung in there against some better teams like the Colts and whatnot. But this should be a game where the Steelers handle business. They just had their trap game a week ago with Dallas. They only have one or two of those a year, so they've gotten that out of their system for the Steelers. This should be a game they handle easily. If they got some banged up guys, rest them. I'm going with Pittsburgh as well.
Again, a good one that we called that banana peel. We went into that game. I said, this surely can't be in banana peel. I mean, it wasn't at the end of the day. I don't know. It seems that they did get either they took their eye off the prize or they were looking at the 8-0 that it hadn't been done before. But isn't it funny the struggle that you go through to get to 8-0? And even though Cincinnati's a better team, it looks like Pittsburgh should be able to go to 9-0 for the first time in franchise history.
Which is still crazy to me, by the way, that a franchise as historic as them, that first of all, they never had a team that went 8-0, and now they're about to never have a team that went 9-0. That's just insanity to me.
There's enough teams have gone to 8-0 that I was reading a story about it earlier on. I don't have the numbers now in front of me, but it's something like there's been 24 in the last whatever in the Super Bowl era, which obviously 1 and 2 years has one, and or well, just a bit over that. But it's like, yeah, since 2015. None of the 8-0 teams have gone to the Super Bowl. The last one to do it, or to win the Super Bowl, I should say, was the Saints back in 2008 or something like that. My numbers are a bit sketchy there, but it's kind of to paint some bit of a picture. You can look into that if you wish. But yeah, I suppose when you hear those kind of numbers, it's even more mind-boggling because you're like, it does happen. And Pittsburgh has been a good team throughout the years, and obviously they weren't able to get it done. But yeah, it's obviously an impressive. Don't get me wrong; it's a huge.
Amen.
It's a huge stat, and to come off it real quick, Pittsburgh is still sitting at number 2 on my power rankings, and I just am again the whole thing with Kansas City. I'm just more impressed by Kansas City, even though Pittsburgh is frightening right now. I just think in a head-to-head matchup, I still pick Kansas City over Pittsburgh.
Agreed. I didn't even have to think about that. It's just gut reaction. Yeah, I agree. They're the best team in the NFL, and it ain't even close. So
yeah, and it's just what we talked about a few weeks ago. I know this isn't the Kansas City segment, but
yeah,
but it's kind of how they're able to beat you. I suppose Kansas City is off this week, so with them on a bye, we got a quick mention to them. But yeah, they just can get things done in so many ways that look what happened in Pittsburgh the other day. It was a bit of a weird one.
I think I tweeted it out a couple of weeks ago that I said an AFC championship game between the Steelers and Chiefs would be a lot of fun. And I'll die on that hill. It would be a fun game if we ever get to that point. But that's the Cincinnati and Pittsburgh game. And I want to move to one of my last remaining games. And I think it's the most fun one out of the bunch that I have left, because it's the 7-2 Buffalo Bills, who have won 3 in a row and finally got their big win. They finally did it, people. They finally got it. Are going to Arizona to take on Mark's 5-3 Cardinals. Mark, I literally have it written in my notes in all caps. That's what the F I was talking about, Buffalo. You finally did what we were begging you to do. They went out and beat a team that we all thought they weren't as good as. And they did it in style. Josh Allen looked great. Their defense played well enough. I do want to make a quick mention before I get into this game that, as it's been talked about throughout this week, Josh Allen's grandmother passed away the Saturday night before that game against Seattle. And he went ahead and played, and he had one of the best games of his career. Well, throughout this past week, Bills Mafia, the fan base in Buffalo, have donated over $200,000 to a local children's hospital that Josh Allen had been partners with. A gesture to Josh Allen for what he's going through. So big round of applause for the Bills Mafia. You guys, that's really something special. Now to the game. I just wanted to mention that super quick. Now, go ahead.
Before we come off of this, it's not the first time Bills Mafia have done this. When Andy Dalton got them into the playoffs that year, they did something similar and donated to a hospital that was close to him, or a charity that was close to him. That for all the stick that they get for being aggressive fans on social media, they back it up. Their kindness, that is, with gestures like that, which was really nice.
Yeah, it's some super chill people in Buffalo, and that's really something special. And the whole football world is very thankful that you guys are representing us like that. That is very, very nice of y'all to do. So
Now
anyway, they'll go
let's
ahead.
package that part up with us all being nice to Buffalo before we go in hard on why the Cardinals are going to beat them this week.
Yeah, absolutely right. Let's tear this Buffalo team a new one. No, I'm just kidding. So here's what I think about this game, Mark. It's an odd game to me on paper because I think we could get a shootout in the desert. I honestly do believe that. I think Kyler Murray had a mostly solid game against the Bills. Now you can tell me I'm completely wrong and that I don't know football, but outside of, a couple plays here and there, I really felt like he played well. And I wonder about this. Would he have to come out and have another game like that in order to beat the Bills? Not because the Cardinals defense is bad, but mostly because we don't know what we're getting from the Bills offense right now. And that I look at the Bills and I think they're almost like a Dr. and Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of situation going on. What version of that team are we going to get? Are we going to get the team that, lit up the scoreboard the first 4 weeks and the one that showed up against Seattle and threw it all over the yard? Or are we going to get the one that we got for the better part of a month and a half that just was super run heavy and Josh Allen wasn't playing the best? It feels like almost a week to week thing with the Bills in that I just don't know what to expect from them. So I would hope to going forward get a bit more consistency with them and understand them better because it's been a bit all over the map so far in early this season. But as you've known in our messages, I like this Cardinals team. I really like Kyler Murray. I feel like their defense can play well under certain circumstances. I think I view them as a more middle of the pack defense, and I have that same kind of feeling about the Bills defense, is that I both have serious questions about them, and that's where I think the shootout could come from, is that I doubt them in specific areas. So let's see what the quarterbacks can do. But if we're going to a shootout, I look at which team has what kind of weapons, and I really feel like I trust the Bills in a shootout right now to win it in the desert, if it comes to that.
Yeah, I said on the show last week how I was getting confident in Arizona because I think their offense is good and that their defense is as serviceable as it's been for a long time. Look, they were affected by injury last week, and I don't mean the injuries that real teams out for the year like San Francisco, but they got a couple of guys, starters that is, on the COVID list that weren't able to return because it happened outside the 5-day window. You have a 5-day sweet spot that it seems like if you declare on a Tuesday, you can test on a Saturday, but if it comes on the Wednesday, that yeah, I mean, it was frustrating going into the game knowing that you had some holes to fill, and then I suppose if you want to call it insider knowledge, like the DB unit was just, they were on practice squad guys, and they've had to release practice squad guys now because they got injured too, and they've taken on Jonathan Joseph, who's 36 now, who obviously used to be a good cornerback, but that's who they have to bring in now because now Brian Murphy is supposed to be back this week. And I think it does make it more interesting because the Bills will come into that game thinking that it'll be easy for them because they saw, Miami could beat them, so we definitely will. That I think that the Cardinals should be a bit better on that side of the ball this week because that certainly let them down last week. And as far as shootouts are concerned, I think it's worth pointing out, I read via the Cardinals this week about Kyler Murray, and if you're a fan of the team, you understand that he is extremely accurate. But the narrative since the Monday night game and then maybe even the Seattle game is that he's an erratic passer. And it's not the case. He's on pace right now to set the franchise record for completion percentage.
I was about to say, like, I haven't gotten that vibe from him at all. He had 5 incompletions the other day against Miami. Like,
it's just this national story that was going around after being on prime time that he can let the team down, and that. But I think it's anything, or it couldn't be further from the truth. That it's definitely going to be an interesting game because, okay, if the Bills don't go and beat Seattle last week, I'm a lot more confident. And this again is a matchup that obviously I've been dying to see for the last 18 months now, going back as far as last year because the Bills were getting such hype and I didn't believe it. And now they're coming in with all this confidence after, for a month they struggled against the Jets, the Patriots, the Titans, and Kansas City.
Yep.
And it's like that team wasn't going to beat Arizona. 2 weeks ago, I didn't think the Bills would beat Arizona. So for my pick, I'm sticking with Arizona. I hate to be a homer about it like that. But last week, I definitely felt hard done by in that loss. Whereas the Bills, it was phenomenal. Really
Yeah.
was what they did to Seattle. But again, as we talked about already today, that was a dream matchup. If they couldn't do it there, they would have been complete phonies in my eyes.
Yeah.
That Josh Allen has been passing the ball all year. And if he couldn't do it against the easiest team to push the ball on, forget about it. I would have absolutely pulled the plug. So it's definitely, I think, actually a step up for them, surprisingly, to be playing Arizona. Um,
More
that
competent defense. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll be looking to DeAndre Hopkins. I don't know why the broadcast, and maybe I'm wrong in this. The broadcast kept on saying like through the first half he hadn't been targeted, but he had been targeted. It's just that he got 3 PI calls last week that like got huge yardage, but I guess it doesn't go down as a target if it's a flag on the play. I see it as a target anyway. The ball went over his hands, over his head, while a defensive back was pushing him away. So, I mean, that's the influence that DeAndre Hopkins can have on a game. And because his targets are down, I wonder, do they actually go to him a bit more this weekend?
Hey, something to watch, especially if it's a shootout. Just saying. So we're splitting on this one, and I get that one. I really do, because like I said, it's a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde with the Bills. We don't know what we're getting, and I just want to get a better understanding and more consistency with them. That's what I really want to see after they got their big win. So that's it for the Bills and Cardinals in the desert. Mark, where would you like to go next?
Yeah, I suppose before we round up, there is one quick one I could call it that. And it's not that it's a quick game to pick, but when Denver travels to Las Vegas this week, I mean, Denver again went down huge scores in this game. Uh, they seem to just do enough to avoid mass complaints and wanting the head coach Vic Fangio fired, which I obviously wouldn't be for firing Vic Fangio. I think his defense should be good. It's just again, those injuries at the beginning of the year, I suppose you can point to that. But I've gone off Denver with how when I started paying attention to them, like they do go far behind, and then they kind of scrape the score to make it look close. That again, I'm not all in on this Las Vegas team, but I'm certainly intrigued with how John Gruden has turned back the clock and is going with that running style. I mean, I have some numbers there for Josh Jacobs. Yeah, second in the league in attempts, third in rushing yards, and sixth in rushing touchdowns. He's averaging just 3.7 yards per attempt because they use him so much.
Yep.
You know, it's the same thing with Derrick Henry. When you keep on running the ball, you're going to pick up 1 and 2 sometimes because the other team, the opposition, knows to just defend the run sometimes. But I suppose Devontae Booker is a good balance there. I mean, last week he had 8 rushes for 68 yards, which is, I know you're looking at nine a carry there almost. So last week the O line was banged up. They're missing 3 starters, and Derek Carr, who's having a phenomenal year, only got sacked once, and he was still able to move the ball, which I thought was great for him because in other years, if he was dealing with that kind of situation, he wouldn't have kept moving the ball, but it just speaks to him. I mean, his numbers, his best year by and large was 2016, and his numbers all right now are, trending towards him beating all of his 2016 numbers. So, I mean, he's not going to get in any MVP conversation, but with the way John Gruden is now just coaching the team and his boy or selling out and just running the ball like crazy, I think that, it makes Vegas certainly a threat. And it's the unusual one because teams are so happy to defend the pass first and foremost that I feel like I don't exactly know the ins and outs of how game planning happens. I have somewhat of an understanding that I know like your scout team and all is already practicing. When you're playing on a Sunday, they're already practicing to give you the look for Vegas. And I wonder, do teams almost not think it's worth it for one game to go all out on trying to defend against a John Gruden kind of playbook that, look, they left it close there in the weekend against the Chargers. They possibly should have lost except for a refereeing decision. But I suppose I thought Vegas did enough to earn that win. And I think that quite simply, I think that the Chargers are a better team than the Broncos. And that's kind of leaning or makes me lean into Vegas this week that Denver shouldn't be as big of an issue for Las Vegas. And it's a hard game to pick. That's why at the top I said it's not a quick one to pick this game. It's just for my mindset, for what I'm looking for, I've kind of just been turned off Denver a little bit, so I don't get as excited for this. And I am excited for Las Vegas that I'm just going to back them and hope that I'm able to enjoy the game as a fan from that point of view.
Yeah, Mark's right. It's that Drew Lock has not played well the last couple of weeks. I know people are going to say, well, he had 3 touchdowns against the Falcons. I'm like, well, did you watch the first half? Oh, well, he had 3 touchdowns against the Chargers a week before. I'm like, yeah, well, did you watch the first half? This Broncos offense has been terrible in first halves, and like Mark said, they're only scraping in because they're in garbage time in the second half, and they make it close. I I have really when I was high on them like a week ago after watching that Falcons game, not so much anymore. I'm taking the Vegas Raiders in this one. This should be a game for the Vegas Raiders where they come in and assert their division dominance against a team that's close in the rankings to them. Division standing rankings, I should say.
And as they continue to make a push, because when we're talking about earlier on, Miami, the competition for them to get a 7 seed definitely is going to be Vegas, unless Vegas can push itself to a 6 seed. So, yeah, they're right in the thick of things this year. And again, they're kind of going under the radar for a team like the Cardinals, who are sitting at around the same seeding as them. No one's talking about Vegas. And I just think it's a legacy thing that people are turned off by the Raiders, and they're going to mess it up now down the stretch. But unless barring a huge injury to Josh Jacobs, I mean, that'd be devastating. I just have a bit of faith that they're just going to get it over the line, that no one's going to be paying attention, but they're going to knock out a few of these. Yeah, maybe they're 3-score win or 3-point wins, but they seem to be getting it done.
Yeah. By hook or by crook at this point. That's all that really matters. Just get a win.
I thought it was funny looking at John Gruden the other day. He's talking about how he was like talking about attention to detail, and he's like, yeah, in a tough year with COVID, and we're really doing everything by the book, and it's great for the players. I'm like, what are you talking about doing things by the book? You've already lost a draft pick because you haven't been respecting COVID measures enough. That must have been a tongue-in-cheek comment by John Gruden.
Oh, I love me some Gruden. Any great. Any great.
It's so cheeky. I loved reading it. It really made my blood boil.
Oh man. All right. So that's the Denver Las Vegas game. And let me knock my last game out super quick so we can get to the main event of Monday Night Football. Because the 2-6, I was being serious. I'm actually kind of looking forward to that game. Anyway,
right.
The 2-6 Texans are going to Cleveland to take on the 5-3 Browns. And I've got some good news for you, Browns fans. You're coming off your bye week. I've got some good news. I think you guys are about to be the healthiest you've been in the better part of a month plus, because the big thing this week is they're getting Nick Chubb back. That's one. He's been at practice and he's been looking pretty good, according to Kevin Stefanski. 2, Myles Garrett, who hurt his knees in their last game against the Raiders. He seems to be healthy and at practice. And 3, this is one that really hasn't been talked about much, even by me. Wyatt Teller, one of their offensive linemen, he's going to be back for the first time in 3 weeks. So 3 major pieces of their team, count them 1, 2, 3. If you're watching the video show and my fingers are just flailing in front of the camera, are going to be back for this team. And those last 2 are ones I really want to 2 of those are ones I really want to focus on. Nick Chubb and Wyatt Teller, for a team that loves to run the ball as much as the Browns do. And we've really talked about their rushing attack a lot. And we've only mentioned their opponents, the Texans' rush defense, once or twice on this show. It's the worst in the league. They are dead last in rush yards per game with 159.5. If you don't believe me how bad they are, go back and watch the highlights when they played the Vikings and Dalvin Cook is just dragging guys downfield. They cannot stop the run to save their lives. This should be a game, hopefully, where the Browns get back on track with their offense. Kevin Stefanski works his magic. They run the ball 25 to 30 times with Chubb and Hunt, and everything works great. I looked at the weather, Cleveland fans. Don't worry. I already looked at the weather for you. It shouldn't be as bad as your last game. We're looking at 60s and a small % chance of rain. It shouldn't be snowy and unforgivable temperatures. It should be good for you guys to go. This should be a game where Cleveland comes in and handles business easily, especially considering the Texans have only won games against the Jacksonville Jaguars this year. They're 2-0 versus the Jags and 0-6 versus everybody else. This should be a game Cleveland handles easily. I'm taking the Browns in Cleveland.
Yeah, it's a quick and easy one to get done as well. I mean, I like Houston. I think they're doing things the right way. But that addition to Nick Chubb coming back in is huge.
Yeah.
And I think, a lot of confidence coming back from Cleveland after the hype had kind of died down for a minute, that, they could start to re-emerge now again.
Amen. Good luck, Brownies. Good luck.
So I guess it brings us to our last game.
Hayden, football.
Out of nowhere, right? Which to me is, I find a super interesting game. I mean, Chicago got off to the start that I feel like Minnesota deserved to have, really. I mean, they're pulling wins left, right, and center while Minnesota was just struggling big time. Now the Bears have lost 3 in a row, and Minnesota's gone and just beaten the Lions and the Packers within the division back to back. So they're gone for a clean sweep over the course of 3 weeks.
Yeah.
With the NFC North. How'd you like that, Detroit Lions, who only got 2 wins in the last however many years, like you said?
What a callback. What a callback.
So this is to put Minnesota a
Mhm.
game behind with 1 in hand if they can win it. And I think it's what they deserve, really. I mean, Dalvin Cook absolutely has the team on his back, as you just talked about there, Houston game,
Mhm.
that he's averaging 147 total yards, which is phenomenal. I mean, I'm sure that breaks some kind of record. But even when Minnesota has 7 rookies starting there last weekend, like, he has them on his back so much, in my eyes, that they're able to win these games now. That yeah, I mean, when it was on Kirk Cousins' back, he wasn't doing too well with it, and Dalvin Cook has stepped in, and obviously you've said it before, Justin Jefferson has stepped up. That, yeah, it's good. And another one to look at is Irv Smith Jr., the tight end. He's getting more targets now as the season goes on. He's probably getting rid of phasing Kyle Rudolph out as they look to Irv Smith being him in the future, but it also helps at the same time to be able to utilize him, because if you can have those heavy sets in, it obviously makes the run game go a bit smoother, and then play action all opens up off the back of that. When you look at Chicago, though, there's a couple of things to look at. They just held Derrick Henry to 63 yards. So, I mean, again, I think that Derrick Henry's numbers have been inflated to me somewhat. I had numbers at one time to back that up, and in the last few weeks, I suppose Derrick Henry has taken off and had big plays. But through the first couple of weeks, he was a bit slow, I thought, and maybe that's to do with that. That's why he only had the 63 yards the other day. But yeah, it's definitely going to be a challenge for Dalvin Cook, and maybe that gives you a pause for thought. But the greater thing to me is Matt Nagy hasn't lost to Minnesota yet, and it seems that he just knows Mike Zimmer's defense. Like, he knows how to beat it. I mean, part of that could be the Kirk Cousins thing and having him in there. And this week, if the whole prime time comes back to bite him in the butt again, and in these last couple of meetings of these teams, Khalil Mack has had a couple of sacks each time against Kirk Cousins. So there's little, I guess, nuggets that are there. But again, if Matt Nagy knows how to beat the defense, the pass defense for Minnesota is ranked 30th right now. They've had 8 guys come in at cornerback for them so far, and 4 guys at safeties. Like, that's them signing a guy a week at this point for Minnesota. That it is a bit all over the place. That there's pros for Minnesota, and there's certainly some cons. And going into a Monday night football game, we've been hard done by, really, for primetime games this year. When you're thinking about, like, I mean, it's not the schedule's fault that Tampa Bay blew up on Sunday night just there, and that then the next day we have New England versus the Patriots. But yeah, I mean, we have 2 great primetime games this week. Obviously, last night's Thursday game, and then this week's Monday game.
Yeah,
just has such huge implications for that division, and not the winner of the division, but I suppose the wild card. Whoever comes out of this game with a win, like, the storyline is going to be huge for them. I mean, because it's going to be that they, whatever, they're the ones that will likely get the wild card spot, and on the other side, it's like Nagy's job security or whatever. I mean, we all obviously talked about it. You brought it up last week, the whole Nick Foles looking at the armband. That's not a good look for Matt Nagy. That, he seemed to be. But then people are asking, oh, should he hand over the play calling? But who's he going to give it to? John DeFilippo. I mean, he was a disaster in Jacksonville play calling. So yeah, there's a lot to unwrap with this, and I almost feel like we're doing our preview on the year show again. These two, just as divisions go, they match up so well for one another. Like, Matt Nagy just knows Mike Zimmer's defense. That it's certainly interesting. With that said, I'm going to go with Minnesota.
Hey,
I hope for their sake that Dalvin Cook, because I think they deserve it more, honestly. I think if Dalvin Cook can keep bailing them out like he's been doing, give Kirk Cousins a chance. They obviously have plenty of talent around them now, like I said, Irv Smith Jr. breaking out and stuff like that. That I said in my power rankings a couple of weeks ago, can reinforce it again. They were just outside that bubble, and they've made hard work of it for themselves to get into the playoff hunt. But they can still get in there, and by knocking off a team like Chicago, who is just on the outsides themselves of it, definitely it's a huge step forward.
Yeah, I'm going to run through some numbers real quick, and then I'll give my pick. From our friend Will Regatz, who was on the show in the summer from Sports Illustrated, Minnesota has lost 16 of their last 19 games at Soldier Field in Chicago, including a 1-4 record in primetime, which this game is. And as Mark has alluded to earlier, that Kirk Cousins has struggled a bit in primetime. He is 0-9 on Monday Night Football, in case you haven't heard that number, because I know nobody has ever mentioned it ever. So the onus is history says that this Vikings team doesn't go to Chicago and play well in general, and especially Kirk Cousins doesn't go there and play well, especially in a primetime game. Despite all of that, I am also taking the Vikings to win. They have all the momentum in the world. Chicago is literally cratering. And like Mark alluded to, the schedule softens up for Minnesota going forward, including this game on on Monday against the Bears. The Vikings' next 4 opponents, only one of those teams, which is the Bears, has a winning record. They can rebound people. If Dalvin Cook keeps playing like this and Kirk Cousins is starting to play a little bit better, we saw that this past Sunday against the Lions. I know he only completed 13 passes, but he threw 3 touchdowns. They're starting to figure things out in Minnesota. And that if a team is suddenly going to get hot and become somebody you don't want to run into late in the season, it could be the Vikings. I'm taking them to win, and they should have a ton of momentum going forward after that.
I think it's almost worth putting a note. So the teams that they have after the Bears are the Vikings have Dallas, Carolina, Jacksonville. Okay, so you can definitely see them getting a win over Dallas. The Panthers game, I think, could be tricky.
Yeah.
Who knows, though, Christian McCaffrey be back, but I think that Carolina's proved to be a thorn in team side this year. Jacksonville. So that's 2 wins, potentially 3 if they get this one on Monday Night Football.
Mm-hmm.
They'll be against the Bucs then, who I'll be giving the W to the Bucs. I feel like they'll be strong again. And then they play the Bears again. So again, that game's a toss. They have the Saints then, and then the Lions. So like I feel like it's a real 50-50 going forward, that it's not automatic wins by. So don't mistake us saying that they have an easy schedule. I mean, they still have work to do, but a win this Monday kind of pushes them into could be playoff team.
Oh yeah.
Especially if an eighth playoff team, which I really hope doesn't happen. I don't know your thoughts on it, Hayden. I really don't want to see an 8th playoff team coming in.
Yeah. If we get an 8th playoff team, that means games got canceled, and I don't want to see games canceled. So yeah, I mean, would it be fun if we got an extra playoff team? Sure, but I don't want to see games get canceled.
I think it dilutes it down too much. I mean, maybe I'm saying that because I think that the Cardinals could get the 7th seed, but I would also be hugely benefit as a Cardinals fan if there was an 8th seed, because it would lock the Cardinals up, you'd imagine.
Right. Yeah.
But I just think it's too much, and it's like the playoffs shouldn't be for half the league. Like, I mean, I didn't like it at 6 because I really wanted more games and more. But at the end of the day, I just thought that the playoff structure was perfect. It was a perfect amount of super talented teams make the playoffs. You didn't need the Vikings of all teams could, if they made it to the playoffs, be a bit of a nuisance, a bit of a handful, because it means that a team that lost early in the year then got good.
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't like it in terms of like that's not how things work around here, I guess. So maybe I'm wrong, but I would just 6 was enough for me. Okay, bring it to 7, but please do not introduce an 8th wild card.
That's fair. I get that, and I totally understand. Like I said, I just hope games don't get canceled. That's the last thing I want right now. I just don't want no games canceled. Hopefully it's just a contingency plan that if games get canceled, they'll add an extra team in each conference. So hopefully it won't come to that, but it's there if it's needed. All right, people, that was our Week 10 preview show. Mark, I had a lot of fun. I don't know about you, but I think we can get some good games out of this weekend. I'm happy we get some good primetime games now, like you said.
I'm left scratching my head thinking, John Gruden has been following COVID protocols. John Gruden, I've just said, is a wildcard team, the ones to beat. Yeah. Will John Gruden be the one to try and get a game cancelled? So they introduce...
It's a conspiracy plan by Mark and John Gruden.
I'm glad we're wrapping up now. I need to get onto QAnon real fast.
Oh, wow. Mark from deep downtown with the 3-pointer. I love it. All right. That's it for this show this week, people. Make sure to check us on next week's show when we preview week 11. That's Mark. I'm Hayden. Thank you all for stopping by. Have a good weekend. Bye.